The ending of 1968 left us in stunned silence. It sparked questions. What happened before? What happens next? It was an ending built to launch a franchise. But in 1970, 20th Century Fox decided to do the exact opposite. No main character survived. The entire world was incinerated. Why? Why did the studio slash the budget in half, forcing the director to film a sci-fi epic on a sitcom schedule? And why did the lead actor demand that the world be destroyed as his price for showing up? Welcome back to Golden Flicker. I'm Gabe, and in this video, we are digging through the radioactive ruins of Beneath the Planet of the Apes. We are going to expose the financial disasters, the rejected scripts about Circus apes, and the rushed production that accidentally created one of the bleakest films ever made. To understand why Beneath looks the way it does, we have to look at the bank account of 20th Century Fox in 1969. The studio wasn't just nervous, they were in a panic. While the first Planet of the Apes was a surprise box office smash, the studio was simultaneously reeling from massive, big-budget failures like Star, Hello Dolly, and Tora, Tora, Tora. The executives decided a sequel was necessary, back when sequels were still considered risky business. But instead of rewarding the franchise, they punished it. Fox cut the sequel's budget roughly in half, dropping it from about $5 million to a mere $2.5 million. This single decision became the primary driver of every creative choice that followed, turning the production into an exercise in cost-saving rather than world-building. Before the cameras even rolled, the script went through a chaotic evolution that proves just how unsure everyone was about how to continue the story.
Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius.
Rod Serling, the genius behind The Twilight Zone and the original film's twist, was approached but declined because he couldn't deliver a script quickly enough. Then they turned to the creator himself, Pierre Boulle, the author of the original novel. He submitted a concept titled Planet of the Men. In his version, the humans would stage an uprising, reverting the apes back to primitive states. The script ended with the brilliant Dr. Zaius reduced to being a circus ape performing tricks. Fox rejected it immediately. They felt it lacked the visual shock and surprise that audiences demanded after the Statue of Liberty reveal. The brainstorming didn't stop there. One early draft introduced a half-human, half-ape child, a hybrid that would bridge the two species. Makeup tests were even done for this creature. However, the idea was abandoned due to fears of the bestiality implications and the terror that it would cost the film its G rating. Eventually, associate producer Mort Abrahams sketched out a story that was handed to writer Paul Den. Den, a World War II veteran, was hired to turn these fragments into a script initially titled Planet of the Apes Revisited. His solution to escalate the stakes? Introduce a cult of underground mutants and a doomsday bomb. The production faced a massive problem. Charlton Heston. The star of the original film despised sequels. He simply did not want to return. The producers were desperate. They knew they couldn't sell the movie without Taylor. Heston finally agreed to return, but his demands were brutal. First, He would only work for a brief window, just 8 days of filming. Second, he agreed to do it essentially for free, donating his salary to charity. But his third condition was the deal-breaker. He demanded that Taylor die and that the world be definitively destroyed at the end of the movie. His goal was simple. He wanted to kill the franchise to prevent any further sequels. It wasn't just Heston who was missing. The budget slash claimed another victim, the beloved Cornelius, originally played by Roddy McDowall. Due to the rescheduled shoot and the chaotic timeline, McDowall was unavailable. He was actually in London directing a film called Tam Lin, but Fox couldn't start the movie without him. So what did they do? They cheated. The film's pre-title sequence is essentially a greatest hits compilation of the first movie's ending. They reused stock footage of Taylor and Nova riding through the Forbidden Zone to set up the sequel's premise without having to shoot a single new frame with Heston for that sequence. Critics at the time noticed this immediately, calling the first act a rehash or a mini remake. It is a masterclass in smoke and mirrors filmmaking to hide the fact that their main stars were barely on set. With Heston only available for the ending, the script needed a new lead to carry the middle of the movie. Enter James Franciscus as Brent. Brent is a fascinating case study in production necessity. He is a rescue astronaut whose story arc is almost a beat-for-beat retracing of Taylor's journey from the first film. Critics at the time, and even modern commentators, noted that his character feels like a whirlwind retelling of the original. He crashes, he meets Nova, and he discovers Ape City. Even the casting was a mirror image. Franciscus was chosen partly because he physically resembled Heston, creating a strange, uncanny valley effect where the hero feels like a hollow echo of the original. Critics like Variety later called his performance substandard, noting he lacked Heston's commanding charisma. To direct this troubled ship, Fox invited Franklin J. Schaffner back. He wisely declined, choosing to direct the Oscar-winning Patton instead. This left the door open for Ted Post, a director known for his efficiency in television. Post was hired because he could deliver competent work on a tight, TV-style schedule. But Post wasn't just fighting the schedule, he was fighting the budget. This is where the brainstorm turns into a scavenger hunt. To build the ruined underground New York City, the production couldn't afford new sets. Instead, they reused and redressed existing sets from other Fox productions, specifically the infrastructure from the musical Hello, Dolly. Yes, the grim post-apocalyptic tunnels where mutants worship a nuclear bomb are actually the joyful streets of a Barbra Streisand musical, just painted over with matte paintings and debris. The budget cuts hit the makeup department just as hard. While the legendary John Chambers returned, the reduced funds meant fewer articulated prosthetics. For the background apes, the studio used cheaper, rigid rubber masks. If you pause the movie during the crowd scenes, you can often see the actors' real eyes and teeth visible through the ill-fitting masks. Here is a detail for the true collectors. If you watch this movie in the United Kingdom in the 1970s or 80s, you might have seen a different film. The BBFC, British Board of Film Classification, demanded heavy cuts to secure a lower age rating. Approximately 10 to 15 minutes of footage were trimmed from the original UK release. What was too shocking for British audiences? They cut scenes of Brent attacking Nova while under mind control, the graphic reveal of the mutants' disfigured faces, a brutal fight in the jail cell, and a gruesome moment where a mutant is impaled on spikes. Even the climactic shootout was trimmed down. This sanitized version aired on British TV as late as 1991, meaning an entire generation of fans grew up without seeing the film's true horror. If you are enjoying uncovering these lost cuts and production secrets, please detonate that like button and subscribe to Golden Flicker. It helps us dig deeper into the archives. Do you prefer the original theatrical cuts or the sanitized TV versions of classic movies? Let us know in the comments. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Brainstorm script is how it mirrored the real-world political chaos of 1970. The writers wanted to capture the tension of the Vietnam War. This is why the Apes society feels so fractured in this film. We see the rise of General Ursus, a character who represents fascist guerrilla militarism. His speeches about expanding ape territory and crushing enemies were explicitly written to echo the rhetoric of Vietnam war hawks and the aggressive militarism of the era. On the other side, we have the chimpanzees staging sit-in protests against the war. This wasn't subtle. It was a direct visual reference to the student protests and anti-war movements rocking American college campuses in 1969 and 1970. Writer Paul Dane admitted that these elements were deliberate satire. He wanted to show that ape society was doomed to repeat the same mistakes as human society, the blind aggression and the suppression of dissent. It adds a layer of intelligence to the movie that often gets overlooked because of the budget constraints. As one contemporary critic noted, the film was loading the history of philosophy into an egg and spoon race, cramming ideas about imperialism and militarism into a fragile story structure. And now the golden flicker moment. We finally arrive at the film's most controversial and memorable addition, the Alpha Omega bomb. This plot point transforms the movie from a sci-fi adventure into a surreal anti-war satire. Writer Paul Dane explicitly drew on his own trauma from the Hiroshima bombings and the rising fear of the Vietnam War. The mutants aren't just villains, they are a dark parody of religious fundamentalism and Cold War paranoia. The mutants, living in the ruins of St. Patrick's Cathedral, gather for a holy mass unlike anything in cinema history. The high priest intones a twisted prayer to the weapon, and the congregation responds. The liturgy is terrifyingly absurd.
May the blessing of the Balm Almighty and the fellowship of the Holy Fallout descend on us all, this day and forevermore.
They worship the very technology that destroyed their civilization. While some critics, like Pauline Kael, mocked this thematic overload, others saw the brilliance in the madness. Ted Post fought for this theme, arguing in a memo that the destruction of the world shouldn't be a gimmick, but should represent the loss of all hope. It was about showing that humanity and apes had learned nothing. When Beneath the Planet of the Apes was released in May 1970, the critics were not kind. They saw through the budget cuts and the rushed script immediately. Variety panned it as hokey and slapdash, criticizing the dialogue and direction as substandard. The New York Times called it proof in living color that a sequel to striking science fiction can be pretty juvenile. Perhaps the harshest critique came from Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. He gave it 2 stars, calling it a gross error to try and give the series a moral, lamenting the absence of the droll humour that made the first film a classic. Yet, despite the reviews and the obvious corner-cutting, the film was a massive financial success. It grossed $19 million against its tiny $2.5 million budget, proving that the audience's appetite for the Planet of the Apes was stronger than the critics' disdain. The film creates a fascinating paradox. It is a bad movie made of recycled parts, yet it possesses a nihilistic bravery that modern blockbusters wouldn't dare attempt. In the final sequence, the brainstorm of ideas, fascist guerrillas, pacifist chimps, telepathic mutants, collides in a violent shootout. Brent is killed by the guerrillas, Nova dies, and Taylor, shot and bleeding, realizes there is no salvation. With his dying breath, he doesn't give a speech. He brings his hand down on the detonator. The screen goes white. The narrator tells us, "In one of the countless billions of galaxies in the universe lies a medium-sized star, and one of its satellites, a green and insignificant planet, is now dead." Heston got his wish. The studio got their hit. The franchise was nuked. But was it really the end? Because in Hollywood, when a dead planet makes $19 million, you find a way to resurrect it. How do you write a sequel when your setting is space dust? The answer lies in the one concept they hadn't used yet.
We have traveled from Earth's future to Earth's past.
Time travel! But that is a story for another video. If you discovered something new today, subscribe to Golden Flicker so you never miss a story from the annals of cinema history. Which film should we explore next? Let us know in the comments.